Hey, this is your boy Zero to Pass coming at you. I made a video a couple days ago. I took it down because the music wasn't sure I could really use it. So if you watch that video, you don't need to watch this video. Uh, but yeah, I'll go through it pretty quickly. This is my current version of Link Joker that is relatively competitive, can try to keep up with the current meta that's really broken, that I hope Bushiroad does something about. But the bottom line is you need 4 freeze rate. I don't care what you're playing. You're playing Messiah, you're playing Chaos, you need 4 freeze rate. So I'm currently not running the Cyber Dragon Ride Chain fully. I'm not running the grade 1, so I don't need Micro Draco Kid. If you decide to run that, you do need Micro Draco Kid. Otherwise, run your favorite Vieira Foily starter. So get that out of here. For now, triggers. So 4 heal, 20 Ks. I would not replace these with anything. 4 critical strides. 3 GB1 into soul. Give your Vanguard plus 10k until end of battle. Draw a card. The reason I say 3 is this is going to get replaced with our OTK trigger. The really cool thing about the OTK trigger is when you check it, it gets banished and you draw a card. This draws a card. So, but OTK triggers, are they going to be cool? We'll see. I don't know. OTKing on Stark, that first check, and then, yeah, it seems kind of broken. But you're going to run it because you can run it. And then for Wreath, PG Dross. And I wouldn't really change anything other than the one trigger that we're going to get soon. So, grade 1s, we got the hookup with clan selection. And so we got 4 Claw. Claw's really good. Claw on boost, on attack hit. Look at the top 5 and get a Starvator. It's pretty simple. Shuffle your deck. It also can go into Soul to unlock one of your opponent's regards to lock the other one. So say, for example, they lock one of their back row. You can then use this to unlock that to then lock one of their front row if they have one there for you to lock. Barrel is our Omega Locker, on place proc, so last 1, and your opponent's cards are Omega locked. Now, the really cool thing about this is you can plan ahead, do this on your turn. When you're using Freeze Ray, when they attack you on their turn, that next turn after you use this, those cards that get locked by the effect on Freeze Ray are Omega locked. Yes, it works that way. So you can think ahead, and it's really, really important card to help slow your opponent down, to help grind the decks down to a halt, the game to a halt. So in favor of your tempo. I'm running 3 of the grade 3 Searcher. I think she's still important. If your opponent, the relevancy here is if your opponent has a locked card face down. Locked card, she becomes a 13k booster or beater. Really good. So I would still run her. And then three zinc. You do not need 4. You do not need 4. 2, 3 zinc. I recommend running 3 because I'm not running the Searcher in here, so I've got her at 3. And you're going to proc this once or twice a turn. You don't want to be procking this 3 or 4 times. You're going to just stick out. So there's that. Okay. So let's go ahead and keep moving right along. We want to hit Freeze Ray, so we're going to run Collapse. If you went second, when you ride your grade 1, before attacking, stop, pause, look at the board, look at what your opponent's playing. If you think giving them damage is going to be favorable for you, give it. If it's not, then don't, just stop. Because you want them to take this hit. If they're at 0 damage, you're swinging with this. Are they going to block this? Say they're going into the grade 3, they're going into Defender or whatever their next turn. Are they going to block this? They're going to want that 1 damage. And that's going to give you a chance to get Freeze Ray. So you have a good counterattack during their offense. So at 4. Another great card we got from Clan Selection. Clan Selection was really good for premium. Is Zirconium on place on ride. Counterblast 1, your opponent looks at the top card of their deck. They place it in one of their rearguard circles, empty rearguard circles, which is important, as locked. If they put it in the back row, he gets plus 10, and you draw a card. If they put it in the front row, well, front row is locked. The other thing that this gives you is your Vanguard. If they're Starvator, they get plus 1 crit. Now remember, when you stride, if the stride itself doesn't have Starvator on it, if your Vanguard Starvator, it gets a crit. It actually resets the crit to 2 basically. You if your stride doesn't have Starvator in it, but your heart does, your Vanguard is still Starvader because it retains the name of the heart. So that's important to remember. And then lastly, Photon. I prefer Photon at 3 to 4, but currently I only have room for the 2. So I'll show you here in a second how you can actually sneak one more in if you don't want to play with one of the grade 3s I'm running. So grade 3s, first and foremost, the Spotlight, the thing that even makes us even remotely possible to play with top decks is Freeze Ray. So Freeze Ray, what Freeze Ray basically says, second effect, which is the one that's really relevant, is when you take damage. When you take the damage, right as you take the damage, not at the end of the battle. When you take damage, you lock one of your opponent's cards. So if your opponent's playing with a board of Hollow or whatever, they're going to balance things. Well, you're going to lock it, and then when it unlocks at the end of the turn, those effects are all gone. It's effectively a new card, Fighters rules in the fine print, but that's important. So early, you're going to want to guard pretty hard early on, because if you're just taking damage, say you get grade 1 attack, grade 2 attack, thing, you're taking damage. Once you get up to once you get to 5, you can't use this anymore, really. If you're just yellow and hope I get a heal trigger, but this is really going to be good for those first 4 to 5 hits that you take. So you're going to want to guard a bit hard if you can, and then you'll be able to proc him more. So, and this really helps shut down loops. It helps effectively against Nudio, things like that. So very, very important card in our deck. The other grade 3, the other king is Chaos himself. I'm running him at 3 because this is your late game card. This is your early game card. If you have a locked card, if your opponent has a locked card, this gets plus 10k on Vanguard or Rearguard. So it's really cool that he has a Rearguard effect now. So it's not just a dead card. If you have to stay on Freeze Ray, your opponent has a locked card, you can actually call this to Rearguard, and it's going to be a 23k beater. It's pretty cool. If you're on Vanguard at the end of your opponent's, or not the end of your opponent's turn, if you're on Vanguard, this is typically going to happen at the end of your opponent's turn. Whenever one of your opponent's cards is unlocked, you can Soul Blast 1, you proc him to Soul Blast 1 to then retire that unit and draw a card. So if you went first, you can use this effect pretty easily. If you're using Claw, you can lock to unlock and then proc together with him to retire as such, things like that. If you went first, use this ability, lock one of your opponent's cards for Counterblast 1 once per turn. Give your opponent a force marker. They get to choose, force 1 or 2, they choose. Whatever they choose, they stick with for the rest of the game. And yeah, you may use that, you may not. It just kind of depends. So, but the really cool thing about him is the draw engine and the retire draw. So, and when you retire the card, you effectively take 2 of your opponent's markers. So very important, right? That's how you're going to get your markers, is through his retire draw and then take marker effect. So for one Soul Blast, and you can multi-proc. You don't have to just do it once per turn, or I should say you can do it more than once per turn. You're not limited to. Lastly, I'm running Glendios. I'm running him at 2 in case you damage check one. Alternate win con. Bottom line is if your opponent has 5 locked cards at the beginning of your main phase while you're on him, it's what it says here, and you're at 5 damage, you win the game. Pretty easy to do in this deck, actually. Using Barl, using Freeze Ray, using other locked effects, Zirconium, Photon, Strides. This is actually really easy to use unless you're running against something like Anj, which I do. So I highly recommend it. If you don't want to run this, if you want to take this out, you could go ahead and put in easily another Photon and another Chaos Breaker. I'm not really sure how I'd get a 4th one of this in here, but you could at least go up to 3 Photon and 4 Chaos Breaker. So that's an option. That is an option. And this is the grade 1 I was talking about, the right chain, just to show you. Okay, this is the old Gravity Ball Dragon from, what was it, BT? Yeah, BT12, original game, OG. Okay, so that's one of the changes you can make if you want to try it. But I recommend this. Try it. Read through the deck. Look at the cards. You're going to see that, wow, okay, yeah, this is pretty easy. It's not that hard. So there's that. Okay, so Strides. Guardians first. Dismal, Protect, Zirconium. Lactus Carina. Get yourself up to GB3 so you can then Stark. Or do things like shut down Megiddo plays. Wreath, Counterblast 1, force your opponent to pick one of their back row rear guards, lock it, and he gets +5. Pretty easy. Genesis Beast, unlock 2 of your opponent's rear guards, and this gets +10, becomes a 25k. And if you're on Starvader Chaos Breaker, you can then use him. Soul Blast 2, draw 2. So effectively, you're going to get +10 more guard while drawing 2 more cards. So yeah, it's pretty good. Stark, I would still run Stark. Stark is definitely a finisher in here. Now that we have OTK trigger, Stark's even more of a finisher. I currently have Progenitor in here. This is really if you're on Freeze Ray, which you're going to tend to be on Freeze Ray. You have another Freezer in hand. Your opponent has not really much on the board going on. You could use this to Counterblast 1 to basically pseudo delete your opponent's Vanguard to 0. Basically, their force goes to 0 and then attack. It's pretty good. This is because I have Glendios in there. The way this works is if you're stuck at 4 because your opponent doesn't want to take you to 5 because that limit break 5, you can use him, Counterblast 1, damage yourself, and draw a card. And so now you're at limit break 5. It's pretty good. You just have to survive that one next turn. I really like him. Again, if your opponent has not much going on the board, you flip a card and you take all your opponent's markers away. They discard them. This gets +10 and a crit for each one of those. So if you're being damage denied, a really good target. If you're being damage denied, a really good target. Avalanche, Soul Blast 1, lock 2 of your opponent's cards, and then you get a little bit of force bonus on top of it. Really good. The other effect is irrelevant because I'm not running more than 1 right now. Glue Ball, Snowballs. This is the original Glue Ball. Definitely not your first try target. Again, another really free unit. You're going to flip a Glue Ball in your G-Zone. That's why there's 2. You have to Persona Flip, and what it does is for every one of your cards face up in your G-Zone, your opponent has to lock one of their cards. So if they have a full board, this is amazing. And then your front row Starvaders are going to get +3k for every single card that's locked as such, that's locked, that's face down on the board locked. And so that's really, really awesome. It's important that it's locked, not face down like Bind Zone or something like that. So, and lastly, we have Chaos in here. So Alphathani, Soul Blast 1, again, it's really good if you're being damage denied. Soul Blast 1, lock up to 2 of your opponent's rear guards. If you can not lock 2, you can then draw 2. So you can effectively use this to Soul Blast 1, lock 1 if they just have the 1 in play, and draw 2. That's actually really powerful, and I'd say it's really highly underrated. So I would definitely run 1. I do run Universe as a pair. Universe is amazing, especially if you have 2 cards face up in your G-Zone. But the way he works is you Counterblast 1, you force your opponent to take a card from their hand, put it on a open rear guard circle as locked, and then if you have 2 face up in your G-Zone, say you got to use Guardian the previous turn, you can then lock one of your opponent's other rear guards that's in play. So it's pretty good. I still run it. And Deluge. Deluge is amazing. I run this at 2. Deluge is GB3, Soul Blast 1, discard a card to force your opponent to take 2 cards from the hand and put them onto their rear guard circles as locked. This card does not require it to be an open rear guard circle, so it can force retire. And then you take one of your opponent's locked cards and damage your opponent with it. Put it into their damage zone face down. So it can pressure just, yeah. It's really good. I definitely would run it at least 2. So if you want to change this up at all, if you want to take out Glendios, you can definitely take this out. If you don't like Progenitor, you can take that out. Options to consider. You could definitely put in another one of him if you want more of that. Altweiler is definitely an option that others talk about. Maybe another one of him. There's been games where I've actually wanted more than one of this, but it's usually not the case. If you put in another Avalanche, you get into the problem where the cards, when they flip up, they now bind. So you can't use Chaos Breakers, Soul Blast proc to draw. So I wouldn't really recommend this. But these are definitely options. If you definitely, Chaos is very grindy. Starvaders are really grindy in general. So, yeah. Most of the time they're grindy. Most of the time. Unless you're playing something like Venom Dancer back in the day. That's not what we're doing. So, anything else? Oh yeah, just for amusement. Actually, this was quite serious. Actually, I was running this Crunch pair in place of Progenitor and the Glendy Stride, because if I'm stuck on Freeze Ray, Universe isn't the greatest, and here, and Crunch actually gives us an option of Omega locking a column, and if your opponent has a resist unit in that column, you just target the other unit, and then they all lock. So yeah, it's not bad. And again, it's Omega Lock. I mean, if you don't have a borrow online, this actually might be helpful. So Crunch kind of comes back into the scene, and I would take this as a serious option. So yeah, and I've had it in here before. When I didn't have Glendios in here, I actually had that in here, and it was quite relevant. Actually, it was very good. So yeah, that is the deck. That's my updated Starvader. I don't call it just Chaos Breaker anymore because really, honestly, Freeze Ray is doing a lot of the work too. But you know, you can. I mean, we can call it Chaos Breaker. I'm probably going to call it Chaos Breaker when I put it up on YouTube. Because that's who you're going to eventually want to run into if you're given an option to. So I hope you guys like the deck profile again. I know I'm just re-uploading it, redoing it a little bit there. Yeah, you hear the silence. There's no music right now. So I hope you guys are having a really good weekend. Hope you get in a lot of Vanguard. For the English side of things, we just got our trial decks. I'm really stoked about it. I'm excited about it. Of course, you know Zero to Pass is playing Brand Gate. So take care, stay safe, and until next time, peace.